Alright, so I received a phone call today from one of my fans, and he left a message, and he basically said that he was at the gym on the treadmill, and he overheard a couple of people talking about Bruce Lee, and they made the statement that any MMA fighter can beat up Bruce Lee. So this caller wanted me to make a video response to that statement and to sharing my thoughts on it. First off that comes through my mind is I just feel there's just a lot of disrespect, a lot of disrespect to the origin of the martial arts, from Chinese people, from China, just a lot of disrespect in general, um, just a lot of disrespect to the Chinese. And it's statements like that, you know, is the reason why, Yip Man and the Wing Chun community did not want Bruce Lee to share the Chinese martial arts with America or Americans. There's just a lot of lack of appreciation, a lot of disrespect, and a lot of racism, not just back then, but even to this day. And I encountered it. I encountered that type of racism day to day myself, and it's a sad state. I feel that it's beyond just Bruce Lee. I think that it's just the bullying mentality of America. It's just kind of how Americans are raised to feel and think that they're superior to everybody and that nobody is better than them. It's kind of like that type of white supremacy type of mentality, for how Americans feel, about themselves over every other country. Um, as far as Bruce Lee is concerned, he was talented in many different areas. It wasn't just fighting. And I feel that the people that are into the cage fighting, the MMA, and things like that, there's just a recent movie came out called Concussion that really documents and provides evidence to show the type of damage that these people go through as far as their mental disabilities and brain damages that they go through. They call it CTE, which is basically like a brain disease that never heals. And they did research into doing autopsies of football players that's passed away, and they found out that they have this type of brain disease that's caused by concussions. And it's a big thing for football. And the thing is, even in the documentary, even in the movie, they're saying that boxing is even more dangerous than football, and cage fighting is even more dangerous than boxing. So if you look at these people from football to boxing to cage fighting, it's like people involved in these types of high impact sports that are very dangerous, they sustain so many concussions that their brains are not fully aware. They're not conscious. They lack like precision. Like it's like the opposite of a scientist. Like you got a scientist, which is kind of like the direction Bruce Lee was heading in, because Bruce Lee was like a scientist. He was somebody who really studied and analyzed the techniques of combat very thoroughly through like scientific experiments, kind of like what an Einstein would do. It's like a very developed brain that's refined. But combat sport people and fighters and football players, they're like the opposite of that. So their brains they're not developed in those areas. They might be developed physically like an animal, like a bull, or like, an elephant, but they're not developed mentally. And because they sustain so many concussions, they just lack the intelligence to understand the science of real efficient combat. So when you have somebody who's a scientist or a martial artist or somebody who's actually intellectual try to explain to these people the real science of combat, they just don't get it, and they never will get it, because this brain disease, this CTE, is something that cannot be healed. Like it's lifelong. Their brains are damaged for life. There's no cure. So a lot of these fighters, it's it's pointless to argue with them because there's nothing, they will never have the brain capacity to understand the real science of combat. So like they can make all sorts of crazy statements all they want, but the people that are truly intelligent, they know the truth. They know that you know somebody like Bruce Lee, who really studied the science of combat, was really good at what he did, and very few people during his time and even during this time and probably for all time would ever reach his level of proficiency in what he did. The way that I view Bruce Lee is kind of like the real martial artist for scientific combat on the streets, dealing with all sorts of different encounters other than the firearm, because Bruce Lee didn't really go into the firearms, but he went into unarmed combat, and he went into combat with different weapons, different elements, such as like defending himself against a sword, against a knife, against a stick. He went into stick fighting and with the bull staff and multiple opponents, and he went into the nunchucks. I mean, he pretty much went into everything except for the firearm, and he's very proficient in what he did. And to me, he's kind of similar to like like a Floyd Mayweather, but for the streets. Like Floyd Mayweather, he's undefeated, and there's a lot of people out there that don't like him, and there's people that do like him. There's so many people that challenge him. It's like he's undefeated, but no matter how many fights he has, no matter how many times he proves himself, there's always going to be the people out there that just doubt him, don't like him, and want to challenge him. And so it doesn't surprise me that there's going to be people out there that hate Bruce Lee. That don't like him, that think that he's weak, that he can't fight, that he's nothing special. There's always going to be people out there like that. And it's not just with Bruce Lee, but not just with Mayweather, but even in the rap industry, you see it. It's like not everybody loved Tupac. There's people that hated him. And just with every other rapper out there, Eminem, 50 Cent, Drake, like all these big name rappers out there, that's made a name for themselves. Dr. Dre, like there's always gonna be people out there that hate them. There's gonna be people out there that love them. Some people out there that think that they're not talented at all, and there's gonna be people out there that think that they're super talented. So it doesn't surprise me that that these people made this statement. I myself know for a fact that it's false, and I don't really need to explain why I know it's false. But if the people want to believe something that is untrue, they could go ahead and believe that. It's almost like somebody trying to argue that God doesn't exist or God does exist. It's like there's really nothing to argue. It's like if they want to believe what they want to believe, that go ahead. Some people could still try to believe that the world is not round, that it's flat. They could go ahead and believe that. Some people could believe that Taekwondo is the ultimate martial art ever created. They could go ahead and believe that. These people think that MMA is the ultimate. Well, they could go ahead and believe that. But for me, like my reality and my truth and my experiences are different. I see that we live in a different time now. There's so many guns out there, and there's all this gun violence, and that to me is the reality. All this stuff about martial arts, and this person's better than that person, and this is the best fighter, and this is the best martial artist. To me, it's just a bunch of nonsense and arguments amongst people that have CTE, amongst people that have sustained many concussions. that have brains that are just severely damaged to the point where it's like I can't even, I don't even feel that it's right for me to communicate with these people because we're not in the same level of understanding. I don't go through concussions. I don't get knocked in the head. I don't lose my memory like that. I don't step into the boxing ring. I don't step into the cage. I don't get dizzy. I've never been knocked out. I've never sustained those type of head injuries. So these people that are going through all these concussions, our level of understanding will just not coincide. It never will, because these people will never recover. It's not like they will get better. No, they're gonna get worse. Like, there's no turning back. Their brains are so damaged that we can't even communicate anymore. We're speaking at different levels of communication. And these people feel that these fighters are better than Bruce Lee. That's their world. My world is, hey, Bruce Lee is better than all these fighters. Way better. Not just as a practitioner of the science of combat, but also just overall development as a human being in general, in all areas. So I just think that not just Bruce Lee, but the people that represent the martial arts, all the hidden martial artists out there in this world, the Jet Lis, the Donnie Yens, the Jackie Chans, the people that are more peaceful with their expression of the martial arts in film, like Tony Jaa, and just all the hidden martial artists out there. They're just naturally more compassionate, they're more humble, and they're less competitive, they're more meditative, they're more spiritual, they're more non-confrontational, and they're people that value intelligence, they value spirituality, and martial arts is not just about fighting for them, and for them, these people are perceived as weak by these bullies, by these fighters, by these violent people out there. They're always going to say that they're stronger and they're better and they're faster. But it's just kind of like, the fighter that's trying to say that, he's so much better than Albert Einstein. It's like Einstein might have not been physically gifted. He wasn't an athlete, but mentally he was very, very much highly developed. Or these fighters that they say that they're better than Jesus or Buddha or Socrates or Osho or Lao Tzu. It's like these people have gone beyond the physical expression, and they've reached such a high level of spirit that they transcended the physical. And these fighters, these animals, they have no brain development, they have no intelligence, they have no spiritual development, that they have nothing else to boast about other than their physical talents. And that's just very limited. You look at somebody like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., for example. He wasn't like physically athletic like these fighters, but there's a whole entire holiday dedicated to him and his inspiration, for so many people all over the world, and they study him in every school pretty much about what he did for America, for the people, for the minorities, for to fight against racism. I mean, this is the real power, of the potential of what a human being could do. I mean, look at somebody like Jesus. I mean, probably over half the people in the world worship him and study his life and way of living. Same thing with Buddha. And these people were not like physically oh, the best athlete in the world. These people have reached such a high level of spirituality that they've gained so much respect and admiration from people all over the world, you know, or people like Muhammad and all these people that follow Islam, they follow the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, that's the type of power that I'm talking about. It's not about, oh, I'm faster, I'm stronger. Like, who cares about these people? Like, they're just gonna be forgotten. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I don't care. And Bruce Lee, it wasn't just because he was good at fighting that why I admired him. It's like so many different things about him, He was really intelligent. I mean, what really drew me to him was his writings. It wasn't just because he was good at fighting, He was very intelligent and he was very spiritual, and he introduced me to Eastern philosophy, and I will always be thankful, to him because of that. So these people that make these statements, oh, any MMA fighter can beat him up, it's just people saying stupid things, and it really doesn't faze me because I already know that there's going to be people out there where their brains are so undeveloped that there's really nothing you could do to change the way their thought processes. It's like hopeless. As I stated, when you get CTE, it's lifelong. There's no turning back. It's a lifelong brain damage. And there's a lot of people out there that have this disease, this brain disease. From football to wrestling to boxing to cage fighting, it's all over people out there that have it. And people that value intelligence, people that are scientists, psychologists, philosophers, teachers, like, they have to not even waste their energy trying to argue with these people that really have these damaged brains, because the arguments are just going to frustrate the person that has the healthy brain, because it's almost like trying to teach like a 5-year-old philosophy. It's pointless. You can't. He's not mentally ready to understand those types of concepts, so you can't even that's not even a something that should be discussed, and I mean, that's how I feel about it, My approach has changed. I'm not forcing people to see what I see. I see what I see. I know what I know. And as for others, before they get CTE, there could be a potential for them to realize that the path that they're going on with combat sport is not a healthy path. And then they could essentially awaken and head towards the healthy way. But as for people that are already involved in combat sport, that have already sustained numerous concussions, there's really nothing that can be done. The damage has been done. And I feel bad for these people that they don't see the truth. Like, these people that love combat sport, it's like they really believe that there's such a thing as a fair fight. Like, they really believe that. They think that, oh, there's no such thing as weapons. There's no such thing as guns. Like, this is the reality of what happens. Like, this is what you need to prepare for. Like, they really think that that's true. And to me, that's really sad. It's like, to me, it's almost like still believing that Santa Claus exists when clearly he doesn't. I know he doesn't. But other people, they just strongly believe that he does exist. And I'm just like, who am I to prove you wrong? And for these people that love the combat sport, they really think that this is the real stuff. And for me, I see something completely different. It's all fake. Like cage fighting, boxing, all that is just as fake as WrestleMania to me. It's all just for show. It's all for entertainment. It's just so far from reality of what it is, what it really takes to survive out there in the streets. But it takes a degree of intelligence to come to that understanding. And if you've sustained many concussions, you're not going to come to that understanding. You're going to be stuck in your intellectual growth. And that's just the sad reality that I see.